John Lennon was often the most brutally honest member of the Beatles. After the breakup, he didn't romanticize the past. In interviews throughout the 1970s, Lennon openly criticized certain Beatles songs, sometimes his own, sometimes Paul McCartney's, sometimes the production itself. He questioned lyrics. He dismissed arrangements. He called some tracks throwaways. These weren't songs fans necessarily disliked, but they were songs Lennon felt didn't represent his best work, or the band at its strongest. Here are 10 Beatles songs John Lennon later spoke about with disappointment, frustration, or regret. Number 10, Let It Be, 1970.
In times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me.
Let It Be is one of the most beloved Beatles songs in history. But for John Lennon, it was complicated. Written by Paul McCartney, the song became a defining anthem of the band's final chapter. Yet Lennon later made it clear he didn't feel deeply connected to it. In interviews, he described it as Paul's song. He respected its popularity, but he never considered it a Lennon-McCartney collaboration in spirit.
Speaking words of wisdom, let it be.
During the 1969 sessions, Lennon was emotionally distant from the project. The atmosphere at Twickenham and later at Apple Studios was strained. On the recordings, Lennon's presence feels minimal. His contributions were subtle, bass on certain takes, understated backing vocals. When producer Phil Spector later added orchestration to the album version, Lennon supported the decision, but he also seemed detached from the emotional weight fans attached to the track.
Let it be. Let it be.
For Lennon, Let It Be represented something he was already moving beyond. It wasn't a song he hated musically, but it wasn't his voice. Number 9, Maxwell's Silver Hammer, 1969.
Maxwell's silver hammer came down upon her head.
Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Album, Abbey Road. If there was one late-period Beatles song that John Lennon openly criticized, it was Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Written by Paul McCartney, the track blends upbeat music hall melody with dark, almost absurdist lyrics about a serial killer. To Paul, it was clever and theatrical. To Lennon, it was excessive.
Studied metaphysical science in the home.
In interviews, he dismissed it bluntly. He referred to it as more of Paul's granny music, a phrase he used to describe songs he felt leaned too heavily into vaudeville or old-fashioned pop. But the real tension wasn't just stylistic. It was in the recording process.
Late nights all alone with a test tube.
The sessions for Maxwell's Silver Hammer stretched over multiple days during the otherwise focused Abbey Road period. Paul insisted on retakes, refining piano parts, adjusting percussion, layering details like the anvil strikes. By this point, patience inside the band was thin. Lennon had limited involvement, partly due to his car accident in mid-1969. But he later made clear he felt the time spent perfecting the track was disproportionate to its importance.
A knock comes on the door.
In his view, the energy could have gone elsewhere. Maxwell's Silver Hammer was not a failure commercially, but for Lennon, it symbolized a creative direction he no longer related to. Number 8, Yesterday, 1965.
All my troubles seem so far away.
Yesterday. Album, Help! Yesterday became one of the most covered songs of the 20th century. But for John Lennon, it was never personal. Written entirely by Paul McCartney, the song marked a significant shift inside the Beatles. It featured no full band performance, just Paul, an acoustic guitar, and a string quartet arranged by George Martin. From a commercial and artistic standpoint, it was a triumph. From Lennon's perspective, it represented distance.
Now it looks as though they're here to stay.
In later interviews, Lennon was candid. He said he had nothing to do with writing it and made no attempt to claim involvement. He respected the melody, but he also suggested it leaned heavily into sentimentality, a direction he didn't fully share. More importantly, Yesterday subtly redefined what a Beatles song could be. It was essentially a Paul McCartney solo recording under the Beatles' name.
I'm not half the man I used to be.
That shift would become more common in later years, individual members recording with minimal group input. Lennon didn't attack Yesterday. He didn't call it bad, but he didn't identify with it either. It wasn't his style. It wasn't his voice. It wasn't his emotional language. Number 7, Obla Di, Obla Da, 1968. If Maxwell's silver hammer tested patience, Obla Di, Obla Da nearly exhausted it. Written by Paul McCartney, the song was inspired by ska rhythms and a phrase popularized by Nigerian musician Jimmy Scott. On paper, it was lighthearted. In the studio, it became a marathon. The band recorded multiple versions. Tempos shifted. Arrangements were reworked. Piano parts were redone again and again. By 1968, the White Album sessions were already tense. Individual members were increasingly working in isolation. Repetition only magnified irritation. John Lennon later admitted he disliked the song. He reportedly walked out of at least one session, frustrated by the endless refinement of what he considered a simple pop tune. When he returned, he slammed the now famous opening piano chord, louder and more aggressive than before. That take became the master. Lennon later dismissed the track as another example of what he called Paul's granny music. He didn't hate the craftsmanship. He disliked the priority it was given. For Lennon, the Beatles were capable of bold experimentation and emotional depth. Spending days perfecting a cheerful domestic narrative felt misaligned with that potential. Obla Di, Obla Da was a commercial success. But in Lennon's retrospective judgment, it symbolized misplaced energy. Number 6, Mean Mr. Mustard, 1969. Mean Mr. Mustard is part of the famous Abbey Road medley, a sequence now regarded as one of the band's most ambitious structural achievements. But in isolation, John Lennon later treated the song very differently. The track is short, sharp, almost cartoonish. Lennon originally wrote it in India in 1968, inspired by a newspaper story about an eccentric man who hid money in unlikely places. The lyric is deliberately exaggerated, bordering on absurd. Musically, the song is simple. Driving rhythm guitar, punchy bass from Paul McCartney, straightforward drumming from Ringo Starr. It was never meant to stand alone as a major statement. Instead, it functioned as a transitional piece inside the larger medley concept shaped by McCartney and producer George Martin. In later interviews, Lennon dismissed several of his shorter Abbey Road fragments as bits of songs. He suggested that many were unfinished ideas stitched together to create cohesion during a time when full collaboration was fading.
His sister Pam works in a shop.
Mean Mr. Mustard fits that description. It isn't a song Lennon attacked with hostility, but he didn't elevate it either. To him, it was a fragment. Clever, perhaps amusing, but minor in scope. Number 5, 8 Days a Week, 1964.
Babe, guess you know it's true.
8 Days a Week was a commercial success, particularly in the United States. Its fade-in intro was unusual for the time. Its melody was bright and immediate. Its harmonies were tight and energetic. But in later interviews, John Lennon described much of the Beatles' for sale period as creatively fatigued. By late 1964, the band was touring relentlessly, riding on buses, recording between appearances, meeting deadlines with little rest.
Hold me, love me.
Lennon later referred to several songs from this era as formula or work. He suggested that many were written quickly to fill albums rather than to push boundaries. 8 Days a Week falls into that category. It wasn't a song he publicly attacked with bitterness, but he grouped it among what he considered routine pop compositions, pleasant, effective, but not groundbreaking. For Lennon, the real artistic breakthrough came later, with songs that challenged structure and expectation.
Hey girl, love you all the time.
Compared to those, 8 Days a Week felt conventional. It represented a period before the experimentation of Rubber Soul and Revolver reshaped the band's direction. Lennon didn't deny its success, but he rarely cited it with pride. Number 4, It's Only Love, 1965.
When I see you go by.
If there was one Beatles song John Lennon openly admitted he disliked, it was It's Only Love. Unlike other tracks he distanced himself from quietly, Lennon was blunt about this one. In later interviews, he called the lyrics abysmal. That word stood out. The melody itself is gentle and melancholic, built around jangling 12-string guitar textures and a restrained rhythm section. On the surface, it sounds reflective.
My oh my, when you sigh my.
But Lennon later argued that the words lacked depth. Lines like, "It's only love and that is all," felt, in his retrospective view, overly simplistic and emotionally thin. The recording process in 1965 was efficient. The band was still operating with discipline and cohesion. Producer George Martin kept the arrangement clean, allowing the guitar texture to carry the mood. There was no studio chaos attached to this track. The issue for Lennon was writing quality.
Butterfly, why am I so shy?
By the 1970s, he had become highly critical of his early catalog, especially songs he felt were written quickly or without deeper conviction. It's Only Love fell into that category. He didn't resent it commercially. He resented it artistically. Number 3, Dig a Pony, 1969.
Dig a pony. Well, you can celebrate any.
Dig a Pony was recorded during one of the most documented moments in Beatles history, the rooftop concert in January 1969. The performance feels raw, energetic, almost defiant. But in later interviews, John Lennon downplayed the song's significance. He described much of his late Beatles writing during the Let It Be sessions as fragmented, bits of wordplay and lyrical experimentation rather than fully formed statements.
Yes, you can celebrate anything you want.
Dig a Pony reflects that. The lyrics are intentionally abstract. Phrases collide without clear narrative. Ideas overlap, meaning feels secondary to rhythm. Musically, the track leans on tight guitar interplay and steady drumming from Ringo Starr, while Paul McCartney provides a grounded bass line. Producer Phil Spector later polished the album version, trimming the repeated "all I want is" intro line. But Lennon later suggested that the song was more of a studio exercise than a defining work. It wasn't something he pointed to with pride. It wasn't something he attacked either. It simply didn't represent what he believed was his strongest writing. In Lennon's own retrospective lens, Dig a Pony felt like a transitional piece, energetic but unfocused. Number 2, Good Morning. Good Morning, 1967. Good Morning, Good Morning appears on one of the most celebrated albums in rock history, but John Lennon later dismissed it as filler. The song was inspired by a television cereal commercial, specifically a Kellogg's Corn Flakes jingle Lennon heard repeatedly at home. The idea amused him, and he turned it into a sharp, almost cynical snapshot of suburban routine. On record, the track is aggressive.
Nothing to do to save his life, call his wife.
Punchy brass arrangement, shifting time signatures, layered guitar textures, animal sound effects that escalate in the final section. From a production standpoint, it's inventive. Producer George Martin and engineer Jeff Emmerich crafted dynamic transitions that fit the theatrical nature of Sgt. Pepper. But Lennon later said he considered the song a throwaway. He felt the lyrics were surface level. He believed it lacked emotional weight. He saw it as clever, but not profound.
Nothing to do, it's up to you.
Compared to A Day in the Life or Strawberry Fields Forever, Good Morning, Good Morning didn't represent the deeper introspection Lennon valued in his later self-assessment. It was energetic. It was technically interesting, but in Lennon's retrospective view, it wasn't essential. Number 1, Run for Your Life, 1965.
Dead little girl and to be with another man.
If there was one Beatles song John Lennon openly regretted, it was Run for Your Life. Unlike the others on this list, which he dismissed as weak, filler, or stylistically misguided, this one carried something heavier. The opening line was lifted from an Elvis Presley song. "I'd rather see you dead, little girl, than to be with another man." At the time, Lennon used it as a dramatic hook. By the 1970s, he was deeply uncomfortable with it.
You better run for your life if you can, little girl. Hide your...
In interviews, Lennon admitted he disliked the song. He described it as something he'd just knocked off. He also acknowledged that the possessive and violent tone reflected attitudes he later rejected. Musically, the track is tight and country-leaning, driven by steady rhythm guitar, confident bass from Paul McCartney, and clean production from George Martin. There was no studio chaos, no excessive takes, no conflict over arrangement. The issue wasn't craftsmanship, it was perspective.
Well, you know that I'm a wicked guy and I was born with...
As Lennon matured, he became more self-critical, especially regarding themes of jealousy and aggression in his early writing. Run for Your Life became, in his own words, something he wished he hadn't written. And because Lennon himself singled it out as a regret, it takes the #1 spot.